All right, so lesson 18, living water here. And we'll go through John chapter 4. We'll start at verse 1 and talk about a few things there. So the first thing here is, let's take a look at where Jesus starts out. So the first 4 verses here. When therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee. And he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Joseph gave to his son Joseph. So, we have here Judea along the edge of the Dead Sea there, and then along the Jordan River. And up in the north we have Galilee along the Sea of Galilee. It goes out to the Mediterranean Sea there. And then in the middle we have a chunk of land here called Samaria. We don't find Jews living there. The Jews either lived in the north, up by the Sea of Galilee, or south. Okay. Now we might ask why, when all the people returned from Babylon, why did they settle that way? Why didn't they just take the whole thing? Well, probably some of them remembered their fathers and grandfathers having lived in the north, so they maybe moved up there along the Sea of Galilee because, good fishing was going on up there. But in the south, they moved there because of Jerusalem and that land. But if we also remember, maybe the land of Samaria is kind of a wasteland, not much there. Maybe if you remember back, what did God place in the land when the Israelites were taken into captivity? So if you remember, some of the Judeans, they were left and they were taken to a later captivity into Babylon. But here, the northern tribes, Israel, were taken into captivity by what nation again, Garrett? Nope, that was Judea, not Babylon. What country came and took Israel away, took them into captivity? Garrett? Assyria came and took them away. And what did God place in the land after they left? What did God put there? A beast. What kind of beast was it? Jen?
Lions.
Yes, lions. Okay. So that was probably a desolate land, probably hilly, not very nice to live in. And most of the people, therefore, who were living there were Gentiles, those who probably worshipped idol gods. And, usually a godless people, a nation that doesn't have a God or is godless, they're going to turn to sin, they're going to turn to wickedness. And so many of the people, we can imagine, were not godly people there, so that when Jews would travel through the land, I referenced that on your sheet. I asked that question. If you read Luke 10, verses 3 through 36, you have the story there of something. Why might people not travel through Samaria based on that story? Kenton? All right. We read of the story that we'll have later this year, the Good Samaritan. Okay, there was a Jew traveling through there, and he was attacked. There are robbers and bandits in these areas. Desolate, hilly, desert. Probably not a great land. Probably some good fishing and vineyards and other work up here. We know Jesus was a carpenter. Good work down here. But that land in the middle was desolate. No one of the Jews, at least, wanted to be there because of the Samaritans, the wicked, and many Gentiles who were there. Now, God has His people there, and we'll see that in today's story. So it would make sense for Jesus, as most of the Jews, how would they get from over here in Judea to up over here in Samaria? By what route would they, or Galilee, I'm sorry. By what route would they take? Garrett? All right, they would cross over the Jordan, go through what's called Perea, and then enter into Galilee, or vice versa. Okay? So they avoided Samaria as much as possible. Well, that's not what we read here. Then he must needs go through Samaria. Now, he must needs go through Samaria. Why? Why did Jesus need to go through Samaria? Kenton? Okay. Christ needed to go through the land of Samaria to meet this woman here, to begin his ministry there as well, to speak to these Gentiles. So he goes there, and then we pick up in verse 5 there. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well. And it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For the disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, asketh drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. So we see a few things. Jesus and his disciples in their travels become hungry and thirsty. Jesus here stays by the well as part of, obviously, the sovereign counsel of God so that he can meet this woman here. So he stays by the well. And where do the disciples go, or what are they doing, Jesse? Yeah, they go into the city to buy food. Jesus, meanwhile, remember, he has a human body, so he gets thirsty and hungry and weary and tired just like our physical bodies do. And that's what we read here. So he sat down on this well. Okay? The rest of his companions, the disciples, go into the town. Okay? While Jesus is sitting there, it says, well, let's stop this. It says it's about the 6th hour. The 6th hour of the day would make it about what? What time of day? Faith? Noon. Remember, when the Bible speaks of the 6th hour, it means from the time when they awoke. Well, usually they're probably up with the sun around 6 o'clock. So the 3rd hour of the day would be 9 o'clock. The 6th hour of the day would be noon. Okay, the 9th hour of the day would be 3, so on. So it's probably around noon. The sun is high, it's hot in the sky, and Jesus is sitting down here. And out comes this woman from the city of Samaria to draw some water, probably for herself and her family and animals. Okay? And here she sees Jesus sitting by the well. Now we can imagine what that was like. First of all, she can obviously see that he is a Jew. Now, think of yourselves. You're sitting all alone, maybe in the back of church, and a new stranger that you don't know comes to church. I'm sure all of you make eye contact with them and go right up to them and shake their hands. Right, Grant? Say, hello, welcome. No, that would be a lie. Most of us we'd probably keep our head cast down and we wouldn't want to look. Our shyness, we're a little bit afraid of the person, not necessarily fearing for our lives, but we're just uncomfortable because we don't know them. Now imagine it being a homeless man coming up to you in the back of church. Well, now you'd probably be, a little bit even more on edge. Well, this Samaritan woman, Jesus isn't homeless, but to her, Jesus is a Jew. She has no dealings with him. She knows that Jews hate her and her people. So now she's even more on edge. So we can imagine her coming up to the well and not making eye contact with Jesus, just trying to mind her own business, not even saying hello to him. Because she knows she might get in trouble if she did that, so she keeps her head down and she's going to go lower her pail or bucket into the water or into the well to get some water. And then Jesus speaks to her. Okay? He's thirsty. She's letting a pail down. She draws it up, and he wants some of that water too. And so he says to her, give me to drink. I would like a drink too, he says. And the woman, in surprise, probably not even looking at him yet, she probably tells him, what do you have to do with me? You're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan. Gentile. You have nothing to do with me. How is it that you even talk to me? Okay? And of all things, you ask me for a drink. Well, Jesus answers to her. Okay? He says to her, if thou knewest the gift of God, And who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink? Thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. That's a very confusing verse, and you can imagine standing there in this Samaritan woman's shoes and having this man all of a sudden become a very profound, very wise man who speaks to you, yet you're still confused by his speech. Okay? What did he just say, she might have thought? Did he just tell me that I should have known that I should have asked him for a drink of water if I knew who he was? Well, who is this man? I don't know who he is. Why would I ask him of a drink of water? I'm the one with the pail. Right? That's what would be going through most of our minds when we see that situation, but that's not the case. Okay? Jesus is trying to reveal to her some things about his spiritual, heavenly nature. Okay? Now, Jesus can see into the hearts of people. We saw that already as he did with his disciples. And Jesus can see into the heart of this Samaritan woman, and he knows she's a believer. This woman is a child of God. Now Jesus is going to teach her. He's going to begin his ministry among the Gentiles. Okay? She was going to be one of the first Gentile believers here that we see. So he uses water as a picture. Water is essential for life. How long could you go without water? Approximately, Faith. And maybe a few days and your body would very much begin to shut down. Okay, you would be rushed by ambulance probably to the hospital, where immediately they would start an IV and begin to give you fluids, because your brain and your organs, your heart, everything is based on water. And Jesus is living water. Without water in our bodies, everything begins to shut down. The heart won't pump properly. The kidneys begin to fail. The brain can't properly operate and control the functions of the body. Water is essential for life. And so is water here essential for spiritual life. Jesus is that living water. So, Jesus here teaches her that he is a type. Hey, continuing on there with verse 11. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? So like we just said, what she was thinking in her mind, now she speaks to him. Now maybe she's making eye contact with him. And, Sir, how is it that you can tell me that you're going to give me water? You have nothing to draw water with. You have no pail. So maybe she's thinking maybe the sun is getting to him. He's getting a little heat stroke. He's going crazy. She continues on, Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? Our father Jacob. She's a Gentile. She's not a Jew, so she wouldn't have come from the line of Jacob. But she reveals here too that she's a child of God. Our father Jacob. Okay? He dug this well. Are you greater than him? Okay? That you can maybe dig, or you can give me water here? And Jesus answers her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. Ma'am, you can let down this pail here and you can take a drink of that water and you can drink it over and over and over again, but every day you're going to be thirsty. That's a physical limitation of our lives. Okay? We're always going to need water. We're going to be thirsty. But then he teaches her this important truth in verse 14. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in a well of water springing up into everlasting life. So he's teaching her there. If you drink of the water from the well that I could give you, you're going to have everlasting life. Okay? You'll never thirst again. And now, how can we prove, and I asked that question there, what evidence does the woman give that shows she is a child of God? And it's her answer back to Jesus here in verse 15. The woman said, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. I would like that water. I would like that water of everlasting life. Again, she's confused here because she makes it as though, then I'll never have to come back and draw water again. And Jesus teaches her, no. The water that I give you is not an earthly water that will take away your earthly thirst. It will take away your spiritual thirst. If you drink of me, of the living water, you'll never thirst again spiritually. Okay? And so, then Jesus is going to teach her another lesson. Okay? So, we have here, then the woman, or Jesus saith unto her in verse 16, Go, call thy husband and come hither. Jesus is teaching her a lesson. The woman answered. You can imagine her once again maybe kicking at the dust down at her feet, and her eyes once again downcast because she knows this man maybe already understands her heart, and she's going to be honest, but she's also embarrassed. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. And maybe hoping that Jesus leaves it at that or doesn't know anything about her, but he does. And Jesus answers her, and he says unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast 5 husbands. This woman was living the sin of divorce and remarriage. And he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that thou saidest truly. You have no husband. That's true. Your husband is no husband, because in the eyes of God, he's not your husband. Your husband is the first man you were married to in the eyes of God. Leave off those other men and return back to your first husband. Confess your sin. Say you're sorry for your sins, and then turn from your sin. And then you will have true forgiveness, repentance. And so the woman said now, because Jesus knows this much about her, she says to him in verse 19, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. So now she puts a question to Jesus. Jesus, you are a Jew. Your fathers worshipped in Jerusalem. I'm a Gentile, a Samaritan. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain. And then I challenge some of you to try to find that. What was the name of this mountain? Garrett. Mount Gerizim. So that is where the people living in Samaria would go to worship, Mount Gerizim. The people in Jerusalem, or Judea, would go to Jerusalem to worship. So would the people of Galilee. They would have to travel around the Jordan River back to Jerusalem and worship there. Jesus here teaches her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Jesus is teaching her. It won't eventually be Mount Gerizim that will be the one place that you'll worship. And it won't be Jerusalem that you are required to worship. Remember, the people had to go to Jerusalem to worship. But that's about to be done away with. You won't have to go to the temple after Christ dies. The church can be in any place. It can be here in Randolph. It can be out in Iowa, in California. It can be all over the world, in Northern Ireland, and Singapore, the Philippines. Okay? The church can be anywhere. It doesn't need to physically be in Jerusalem. We don't have to travel all the way to Jerusalem. Whereas we know the Muslims believe they need to travel to Mecca to worship once in their lifetime. But something else that we need to be careful of here, that I would give as a warning, and that is, some people take this too far. We heard, right, Reverend Geikelar preach about the 2 ditches that can be fallen into, one extreme or one of the others. And one extreme is that people say, I don't need to worship in a house of worship. I don't need to. I can go worship God at the Brewers game in spirit and in truth. I'm spending time with my family there. Or I can go to the county park and we'll go swimming and we'll play on the beach on Sunday. And that can be where we worship God, because we're worshiping him there in spirit and in truth. We have our family together. And so you can see this idea can be taken too far. But some who say they are Christian will use this verse as evidence. They'll say, see, as long as I worship Jesus in spirit and in truth, in my heart, I don't need to be in a physical building hearing the preaching of God. No, I can go out and enjoy creation. I can go out and I can spend time with my family, and that should be how I spend my Sunday, worshiping God. Well, it's good to go out into creation and see God's nature. It's good to spend time with family, especially on the Sabbath day. But God also teaches frequently we must be in his house. So we should be in his house at least twice on the Sabbath day. Continuing on here, the woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. And Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. Jesus reveals, he says, I am that one who is come. I am the water of life. Okay? And then, if we continue on down there, we can see how much this woman believes in verse 29-30. She goes into the city, Come, see a man which told me all things that I ever did. Is not this the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came unto him. So Jesus tarried there with his disciples and taught the people in Samaria. Jesus has begun his ministry to the Gentiles. It will be a long time until the Jews see this. At least those who are Christians, we know that will take until Peter and Jesus sending him a vision. Even Peter has a hard time understanding this, that this is changing, because he needs a vision from God eventually. But Jesus teaches here. And so the question is, will we never be thirsty again? No. And that's why there's that question on your worksheets about Revelation. So each of us knows about Jesus. We can say that we've drank from that living water as a child of God. Spirit works in us. But yet it is, we should always hunger and thirst after righteousness. We should always thirst after Jesus. And so it will be in our lives. We should always and will always be thirsty. We get into a difficult time. Maybe a sudden catastrophic accident happens and we lose a mother or father or brother. We will thirst for Jesus. But Jesus will give us of the living water. And even in heaven too, we'll still continue to thirst after him, desire fellowship with him, and to glorify him. So, that's the end of Lesson 18, Jesus in the living water. And we'll see here next time how Jesus heals the nobleman's son.